Hi everyone, Libby and Channing here. As you can see, we are not in our studio, and that is because we are coming to you with a very special invitation to SDSP's second annual AI Plus Expo, taking place June 2nd to the 4th, right here in Washington, D.C. at the Convention Center. It's going to be 3 days full of tech demos, company exhibitions, really important conversations about the future of tech and geopolitics, so you don't want to miss it. So be sure to sign up at expo.sdsp.ai. The event is free and open to the public. And we look straight forward to seeing you there.
Welcome to Strait Forward, a podcast about Taiwan, the island at the center of technological innovation and the global fight for democracy. I'm Channing Lee.
And I'm Libby Lange. And today we are here as part of a two-part episode looking at Taiwan's political landscape and diving deeper into the two main political parties that form it. That is the Democratic Progressive Party, the DPP, and the Nationalist or Kuomintang Party, the KMT.
Yeah, and we're starting with the party in power, right? The Democratic Progressive Party, the DPP. And they've been in power for the last 8+ years, right? Because President Tsai was also part of the DPP, and now President Lai is, again, a president from the DPP side. And we're really excited to dive into these two political parties because it's really important to understanding Taiwan's political system. But Libby, you have some very unique insights into the DPP because you worked for President Tsai for a couple of years. And before we get into this conversation with our special guest today, I was wondering if you can just share, how did that even happen? How did you work for President Tsai? What was that like? And yeah.
Yeah, I will say it was definitely not part of my 5-year plan, not something that I had bargained for when I moved to Taiwan for college. But after graduating college in 2018, I had this really unique opportunity to work at the president's office in Taiwan. And it came about sort of as less of, an opportunity to work directly with President Tsai and more actually to work in sort of this translation and correspondence role, sort of thinking of how the president's office communicates with the international audience. But as that job progressed very quickly after joining, actually, I had the opportunity to try my hand at writing a speech for an event in which the president would be speaking English. And so I said yes, and not to turn this into a career advice podcast, but I would say that when people give you scary opportunities like that, you should definitely say yes at least once. And it turned out pretty well. I think it went well. And obviously, yeah, very soon after that, I was sort of moved to the speechwriting office within the presidential office, and that kind of became my main job, writing speeches, really focused on sort of telling Taiwan's story to the rest of the world, to the wider world, thinking about kind of raising Taiwan's profile, because I think that was really a major aspect of President Tsai's presidency was, Taiwan was really increasing in importance from when she took office in 2016 to when she left office in 2024, right? And so we were really working on kind of crafting that international message and helping the world better understand, what is Taiwan, what does Taiwan want, and what is Taiwan facing.
What were some of President Tsai's key accomplishments during that time?
Yeah, I think that's, tough. Of course, she was in office for 8 years. I worked there, 2-ish years, 2018 to 2020. But I think some major things that I saw while I was there, I would say first, Taiwan-U.S. relations really took off, I would say, during her time in office. We saw tons of progress in terms of, the ways that Taiwan and the U.S. at a government level were able to engage, the ways that trade really grew during that time, things like that. So, even the visits that I was able to take part in where we made these sort of stopover visits in the U.S. and were able to spend time with U.S. officials. Those were all, in their own ways, sort of firsts for the time. And so I think she really set that foundation of Taiwan is kind of this trustworthy partner for the U.S., and we should be wanting to engage with Taiwan across a wide range of issues. So I think that would be number one. Number two, she really set the stage for these important defense reforms that we're seeing in the news increasingly. So that's things like
conscription.
Yeah. So, she took a very, I would say, risky move of lengthening the mandatory military service time from, about 4 months to now it's about a year, right? So all males in Taiwan who meet the health requirements will have to spend about a year in the military. So that was something that she found very important when it comes to Taiwan's willingness to defend itself. She also dedicated budget to things like building Taiwan's own submarines and military equipment like that. So I think that was a major focus of her administration. And then finally, this is kind of something that I found really interesting during my time there, but she started this policy known as the New Southbound Movement. And so this policy was really thinking about Taiwan's role in Asia and sort of how it situates itself there, but really thinking about how Taiwan can engage with Southeast Asia, which I think was really new at the time. I don't think Taiwanese people generally were thinking a lot about Southeast Asia in that way. And so that policy was really aimed at sort of figuring out how Taiwan could bolster those ties and become more a part of that community.
I think it was a very strategic and clever move for Taiwan's foreign policy strategy, if you will, because in the last few months, I have actually heard a lot of people refer to Taiwan as part of Southeast Asia. Again, not something that I even conceptualized. And like you mentioned, Taiwanese people probably don't necessarily think about it that way either. But, I remember when we visited the Philippines last year, it was like a 2-hour flight. And I thought, wow, we really are so close to Southeast Asia. I mean, I guess the whole region, Asia, right? It's all just depending on how you crop the image, I guess. That's where you get it. But no, that's awesome.
No, of course. But, as I mentioned, President Tsai left office in 2024, leaving behind a lot of these, policy initiatives that were in some stage of starting or completion. But now we're almost a year into Taiwan's new president, Lai Ching-te's administration. And as you mentioned right at the outset, he is also a member of the DPP. We were actually there for his inauguration last year, which was very exciting for SCSP to be there for that moment. But I was wondering maybe if we wanted to talk about some of the major themes that we're seeing from this new administration.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll get into this with our special guest, but definitely in the last year or so that President Lai has been in office, he's demonstrated that commitment to a couple of things, right? Number one, this whole of society defense resilience committee that he put together with some of the leading societal, both government, civil society, and private sector leaders. That's been really instrumental, I think, for his administration so far to getting the people prepared and thinking about resilience, right? Because it's about defense and security in the military, but there's a lot also that has to be done within just your society. So that, economic security, for example, right? And so that's been, I think, a good hallmark so far in terms of defense, right? He's definitely committing to higher defense spending and trying to continue reforming the military in ways that will help bolster Taiwan's ability to defend itself. As you mentioned at the inauguration, he said that Taiwan was going to make itself an AI island, right? I know they're still working on it, but that definitely, again, the fact that the president of a country is saying AI is important to us, that is huge, especially for Taiwan, given their semiconductor industry, et cetera. So, definitely, whole society resilience, you have the AI island. Finally, I think so far in terms of foreign policy, he is adopting a very pragmatic approach. And I'm sure we'll get into this later on in our episode as well. But I think the DPP has historically been seen as a little bit more provocative. And so President Lai from day one has committed to continuing President Tsai's, we are already independent. We are functioning independent. We are sovereign. We are going to continue operating as such kind of mindset. And so that's just been something that he's continued forward.
Yeah, so that is, I think, a great way to sort of lay the groundwork. But we are, of course, so excited to be bringing in today's guest who probably knows the DPP better than anyone else in Washington, D.C., right? And that is Iris Shaw, director of the DPP's mission in the U.S.
Yeah, well, let's get into it. Iris, thank you so much for joining us and welcome to the SCSP podcast studio.
Thank you for having me. I'm really thrilled to be here. I'm a huge fan of the SCSP since its inception, so really thrilled to be here.
It was great to hear. We're obviously great fans of Taiwan, and so we're really grateful that you are taking the time to come and talk with us.
Fantastic.
As we just explained in our introduction, this episode and the next episode are meant to introduce our audience to Taiwan's main political parties. And obviously the DPP, one of the main political parties, the party in power right now, is really important for our listeners to understand. So we hope to spend this episode, talking about that, the history and, your kind of future plans. And so, yeah, let's just get into it.
All right.
So Iris, you've been in DC for a while, right? Mm-hmm. You've held multiple roles and at TechRo, and various roles representing Taiwan. So can you just start by introducing yourself and how you got to where you are today?
Oh, yeah. So actually, I started off working at the presidential office under the first DPP administration back in 2004. just like Liz, even she was like much later, was doing mostly international engagement and speech writing. Then 2008, there was the power of transition of power, and then, lost my job like many others, and it was actually a very traumatic time because President Chen at the time was sent to jail, and then the new government was sort of like going after everyone who had work in that office at the time. So it wasn't the best experience. I had a lot of sympathy of what's going on here because we have that transition of power adjustment as well. But then, I was here, and then the President Tsai ran for the office for the first time in 2012, didn't make it. Then that prompted us to establish a more permanent office of the DPP mission. So I was actually the first recruit called for duty to come back to work for the party in 2013. Then, fast forward to 2016, the DPP is back in power. President Tsai won the election. So I had the chance to join TechCro in the political and congressional division just to understand what it's like to work in the government. I was like the only political appointee at the working level, though, so it wasn't easy. And, on top of the long hours and the stress, but I also benefited tremendously from working at TechCro under the then Cat Warrior ambassador, the now Vice President Kim Shao, to learn how to walk that fine balance in a very difficult political space. So it was a nice run, and it really prepped myself well to take the baton from a very well-respected long-term DPP liaison in Washington, Mr. Mike Fonte, after he decided to retire last year. So that's basically my story.
Wow, that's really amazing. And you've kind of, experienced Taiwan's political work both domestically and internationally in so many different ways. But one thing that we found while we were actually researching this episode is that there aren't many political parties with foreign outreach offices here in D.C. It's actually quite unique that the DPP has a permanent mission here. So I would love if you could talk a little bit about the DPP U.S. mission's mission, no pun intended, and what that actually looks like day to day, what you're working on.
So no pun intended, the mission is maybe we could say, just to be trendy a little bit, MAGA, Made America Taiwan Great Again. No, just kidding. I think we could break it down into threefold. We invest, we align, and we compete. So invest in the relationships, and that's in the future generations, the rising political stars, on the day-to-day basis. It probably means we will have some programs like the summer camp that we just worked together last summer with the legislative aides, chief of staff from the DPP side to immerse themselves in Washington's policy community for 10 days. And then we have delegations coming in and out on both ways, and President Lai really wants to help broaden the international space for the DPP's youth. So he's encouraging people to apply for scholarship, internship, and our mission will play a role in that. And the second aspect is to align our interests, and this is actually the most important aspects that we heavily focus on when we have a presence in Washington, D.C., because, there were a lot of competing narrative, and it also brings to my third point of compete. We compete not with our other political parties bringing the domestic politics to Washington, D.C., but we do have to counter misinformation and then compete in the political narrative space, not just on the misperception of party. You probably heard those conventional media headlines of, in the move to anger China, DPP is the pro-independence provocateur to the cross-strait relations. And this is how we started. Now we have, maybe evolved to another level thanks to the evolution of the U.S.-Taiwan relations. We have to find ourselves explaining more about Taiwan's role in the semiconductor industry and AI. But it's all good because these three aspects actually keep us very busy. I do have a lot of respect for Taiwan's diplomats and having worked with them so intimately for the past 7 years. And then same goes with the same reciprocal ethos I have witnessed with our U.S. government counterparts who work on Taiwan-China issues. That kind of kindred spirit is actually motivate us every day to work in the U.S.-Taiwan relationship because, our peoples are really, have this shared values of freedom and democracy that bind us together.
No, Iris, thank you for sharing that because, just as Libby said, we were really fascinated by just the history of how these party offices came to be. Obviously, Taiwan, I think, is a unique situation. But just frankly, on my part, I am very impressed by the way that your party has been able to do this kind of outreach with us, the people-to-people exchanges. Last year when you brought the youth delegation over, I was just, frankly, really impressed that your political party is able to do something like that and invest in the next generation of lawmakers and political leaders because that's so important. And so now that they came to the U.S., we met with them and we'll hopefully continue those relationships. And that's just fantastic for, our system, your system, and for, U.S.-Taiwan relations going forward. So just want to commend you on all of that work and hope that continues.
Yeah, we really enjoy our partnership with you all, and also the young people we brought have really impressive resume of working on the future tech, and I think this is something that will bind our relationship further.
We'll talk about the future in a little bit, but I do want to take a step back and explore a little bit of the DPP's history. This party is still relatively new, right? 1986, right, is kind of when it was founded. So I'm wondering if you can just walk us through that history. Why was this party founded? Why, or I guess how, under what conditions, how have you evolved? But yeah, let's start with some of the history.
Okay. So not to go way further back, but you mentioned about the Civil War era. So my predecessor actually recommended me to bring up what has happened in 1945 because it's an important context of why people in Taiwan pursue their freedom, human right, and liberty, and how the DPP was born from the Strait in that very authoritarian, isolated, and turbulent time. So in 1945, after the war, George Kurtz's Formosa Betrayed detailed a lot of, how that post-war era, how people of Taiwan long for the day of being liberated from Japan and other previous colonizer and to be able to determine their own faith. But instead, 1949, there was the Civil War going on in mainland China, and Chiang Kai-shek came and asserted the martial law. Then Taiwan went into a long period of 38 years of, the deprivation of freedom of speech and freedom of assembly. Worse off, they're estimated maybe 30,000 people who were killed during that time because they're signed a document calling for their constitutional rights to be observed. But then, the bravery continues. So Peng Mingming, and so one of DPP's co-founders, he was set on exile in the States. He came up with this self-determination document. Then in 1979, if you go to Kaohsiung now, you could see a lot of commemoration of the Kaohsiung incident that happened on the Human Rights Day, the UN Human Rights Day. So all that really leads to the 党外, we call it the opposition party, various opposition forces at the time to join together at the Grand Hotel in 1986, and that was like 1 year before the martial law was lifted. I brought with me a book that has, should I just show here? Yeah, these are all the co-founders, including the then Vice President Anna Liu here, and then a lot of them end up to be the DPP chair and prominent politicians. They gathered together, and then they established a party in 1991. Actually, the party platform, the chapter, really called for the establishment of the Republic of Taiwan. But then it's important to know by the time of 1999, before DPP was elected for the first time in power, there was a resolution that stated Taiwan is already independent and sovereign country. So any change of the current status quo need the consent of Taiwanese people by a plebiscite. So this is an important note that I know right now a lot of people are calling for, freezing the independence platform, but it's really not necessary because all the resolutions and all the policy evolution already precede the platform itself, and we are now a party that's in its 16 years in power and really is responsible for the peace and stability of the Taiwan Strait, and really is that responsible stakeholder that thrive to maintain the peace and stability of the Taiwan Strait. That's the status quo, and that's like responding and correlating to the will of Taiwanese people.
Wow, yeah, that's so amazing to have that piece of physical history actually here in the room with us, because on the one hand, it feels so long ago because it's a black and white photo, and yet, some of those dates you were just listing happened after I was born, not actually that long ago at all. And so I guess it's kind of just an interesting sort of time scale to put all of this history in, that it actually, a lot of it happened so recently. And as you can see from the photos in this book, the DPP really did rise out of this grassroots movement that you talked about, right? This dangwai, this outside the party movement. But I imagine that governing a country is quite different from being an advocacy group or engaging in activism. And so I'm wondering, when leaders from the DPP actually came into political power, what that transition was like from activism to governance and what lessons they had to learn along the way.
That's a great question. So 1986 to now, it happened to be from a young kid, teenager, to be a more responsible middle-aged person with more responsibilities on its shoulder. And you're absolutely right that governance and advocacy are very different in terms of you have more responsibilities, and because you're elected under the wish of the majority of Taiwanese people. So you have a lot of hard choice to make, and instead of just like maybe one single issue. So it's hard, and especially when we were the teenager, first time came into the government, Taiwan was more of the party state for a long time, coming at the tail of the martial law, and those people you saw on the street were really like demanding on all kinds of rights-based campaign, and then demanding for elections, free and fair elections. So governing wasn't really something we're trying to do coming from the street. So it's especially when the whole system was established by the Chinese Nationalist Party. So there were a lot of lessons learned. I can't really speak for all of that in the interest of time, but I would say the establishment of our mission is actually one important lesson learned because when we first came back to power, we were thinking maybe TechRo has most of the resources, and then we, just like forget that how people in different generations of policy makers will have to be constantly reminded what DPP is and how our thinking has evolved. We're not that, pro-Taiwan independence provocateur. So when President Tsai ran for the office for the first time, she was here in 2011. After she visited the White House, Financial Times had something came out of quoting a anonymous official saying that they're not sure if President Tsai is willing to able to maintain the cross-strait status quo. But then, maybe they were just referencing at the time where the incumbent government has a relatively peaceful cross-strait relations, and then they had some bad memories of the first DPP government. So that's why we learned that lesson, and we really focus a lot on developing our own sets of cross-strait policy, cross-strait interactions, and really I have delved into 16 defense blue papers when I was, before 2016, I'll translate all of that. We invited, current and retired military officials, really put our hearts and minds together to come up with really solid policy platform. So I think these are the differences that show that we're ready to govern and be that responsible stakeholder.
Can I actually ask a follow-up question to that? Because, the KMT, the other party, has an office now, too. We will be speaking with their representative at a later date. But do you interact with the other party offices during, as part of your work here in D.C.?
Oh, funny you ask. No, actually, I got asked a lot. People here don't like to see political infighting going on, it's like airing the laundry outside.
And we know. We're Americans.
So I have to say, our office is here much longer than they are. They had a temporary office back in the first DPP administration, and then they dissolved, and then they reestablished it, I think, under the second term of President Tsai's administration, if I'm not mistaken. But we have always had a liaison or some sort of the office on and off since the 90s because we recognize Washington has played an important role in Taiwan's democracy and freedom movements. So we are not here, like I said before, to compete with their narratives. If anything, right now we're sort of just try to let the facts speak for itself. Because as you know, Taiwan has a political gridlock due to the opposition-dominant legislature, and they've passed laws, and they have really just cut and freeze a lot of the government budgets. Most serious of all is the defense budget. So what we're doing is not going on a yelling match with the KMT representative office here. What we do instead is to really categorizing and documenting what has been done and said in the legislature, what the bills look like, and what our remedy is, and how our government has made a lot of efforts to communicate with all of the stakeholders and make them understand what each budget is for, try to be as transparent as possible. So this is what we do. And whether I really want to be sitting down with Victor, we actually, trust me, we have a lot of fair share of spending time together in the RNC and other, TechCro events. And there's no personal hard feelings because he also can friend the MOFA system, and I work at TechCro for a long time, so we can actually commiserate over those unforgiving long hours. There are some common grounds there, and it's just that it's like if I ask you the question do you think Republican and Democrats could sit down and talk together? It's a yes, and as well as no. It depends on what purpose you're looking for.
Well, it's good to know there's at least, those conversations can happen at a personal level, right? You have that shared personal past, if nothing else.
Yeah, and to us, right, it's always for that greater purpose. In the U.S., we obviously like to see when our parties work together because we're in service of our nation, and I can see that reflected in your system as well. So that's great to talk about. So you talked about former President Tsai and a lot of the changes that came about during her period during her presidency, and obviously Taiwan changed a lot during that time. But now President Lai, still also from the DPP, we were wondering if you can explain just more on the policy level, right? What is it that President Lai is continuing from Tsai's administration, and what is President Lai now doing differently? Because it's his new administration. It's been a little bit over almost about a year. So if you can just share a little bit on the policy side.
Okay, that's a really good question. I appreciate it. President Lai actually ran on the platform continuing President Tsai's legacy in terms of strong defense, prosperous economic platform, a lot of focus on tech and semiconductor, and really one of the greatest assets from President Tsai's 8 years, and that was also we have gone through the global pandemic. It was really unprecedented challenge, and it came out really strong.
You guys did a great job with COVID.
Yeah, I'm sure Audrey Tan also played an important role. It's more geeky side of it, but we really appreciate. We're really fortunate that Taiwan has came out strong and really stand on the world stage, being that force for good in the world. And President Lai, by all means, really want to continue that. We're no longer the subset of the U.S.-China friction, and Taiwan is seen by a large part of the world as the merit as it is. We contribute a lot. That slogan, Taiwan can help, and Taiwan is helping, is for real. That said, I'll just build on the shoulder of President Tsai's legacy and the giant. We not just continue to internationalize the Taiwan Strait and also position ourselves in the global stage. President Lai has really ramped up a couple of aspects. Let's just put it this way. On the defense issues, the current defense minister is a civilian leadership. He was President Tsai's national security advisor, and all this time at the NSC, he was running as a OSD, really preparing himself to, for this day to be the defense minister and really gear up the critically needed, the urgent steps of reforming our defense posture, defense readiness. And this has been widely welcomed so far in Taiwan's military men and women in the service. The other thing is to the credit of Joseph Wu, he was the foreign minister during President Tsai, and now he's the national security advisor. He just resumed his very famous X tweets. I guess if you're following Taiwan, you still remember that when he was the foreign minister, it was sort of really fun, feisty, vocal voice on Taiwan issue and really diss China. The fact that he's back on X is a case in point that the Lai administration has actually been more direct and upfront and messaging the public and sending that signal of educating the public the level of China's threat today, which is a little different from the past. President Tsai still held up a lot of hope that we need to, because it was COVID, it was a lot of things going on. She really hoped the international businesses won't be scared away when the Economist just put out a cover page and said Taiwan was like the most dangerous flashpoint. So she tend to, like put on a brake on a lot of the threat assessment and be public about it. But President Lai and his national security team are not shied away from telling the public what we're experiencing right now. And at the same time, President Lai convened a presidential whole of society defense resilience committee and really tap into the whole of government efforts, the whole of society efforts. That's anything but the hard deterrence on energy security, food security, cybersecurity. So I think that's the main difference I've seen. And on the foreign policy front, Foreign Minister Lin has done a great job of leveraging the private sector energy to pursue economic diplomacy, because the traditional foreign aid in Taiwan, given given our continue losing battle over our diplomatic allies, we definitely need to renovate our tools, and that's economic diplomacy that goes hand in hand with the 5 major industries that the Lai government have prioritized on, which is artificial intelligence, semiconductor, military, C4ISR, and telecommunications in the next generation. So all that is saying that we have to recognize the fact that President Lai is facing something President Tsai didn't face, which is a opposition-dominant legislature, and we have tried very hard to work through the differences, and hopefully the parties would come to a consensus of what's important for Taiwan, what's important for our survival, and just get the budget gridlock and all the other procedural issues out of our way and continue to advance as a country.
Well, I know that we would love to have someone from the Resilience Committee come on in a later episode to talk about, what you were mentioning, sort of Taiwan's whole of a society resilience concept and thinking about what resilience looks like across everything sort of outside of traditional defense. I think that's a really interesting concept. But it really strikes me that list you mentioned at the end, those industries that President Lai is focusing on are all very sort of forward-looking, right? It's all industries looking toward the future, whether that's semiconductors, AI, which of course we here at SCSP care a lot about, or something like C4ISR. And I imagine that, that ability to sort of look towards the future, part of that is probably shaped by how young the DPP is, and not just in terms of how long the party has existed, but in terms of the presence of young people in the party, right? People that have participated in social movements, people that have run for office at a young age or even held office at a young age. And I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about how young people are influencing the DPP's policymaking and maybe what they themselves hope Taiwan's future looks like.
Yeah, that's a great question. I no longer count myself as young people, so I don't know if I could speak for them, but this has indeed been the major focus of President Lai's administration, because, when he ran in 2024, DPP has been in power for 8 years, and that burden of governance kind of get young people a little, turned down on their enthusiasm just because they've started to see us as more of the establishment, and there's stagnant of wages and difficulty of buying a house and have a family because of the housing prices. So these are the issues we work really hard to address domestically. At the same time, we encourage more young people to participate in public service. We're back to the good old self of really go to different corners of Taiwan around the town to organize town hall meetings. My boss, the Secretary General, actually also put the town hall here. He went around major cities in the United States to really appear to the public what's going on in Taiwan. And it was funny because, for the longest time, nobody really cared what the ROC Constitution was talking about until we have a sort of a constitutional crisis where we don't have the Supreme Court justice, and we sort of were paralyzed in that system when the government tried to appeal the bills that legislature passed, and they found it problematic and impossible to implement. So people are starting to learn that, and young people are at the forefront. We talk a lot today about how DPP came on from the streets. Back in the days, a lot of them were student-led movements. It's all flower. I don't know why. From the White Lily to the Sunflower Movement in 2014, and now it's called the Bluebird Movement. So we really try to tap into that energy. We have a very robust program that invite young people to have a voice in public policy discussions. My favorite boss, the vice president, became Xiao. She is inviting a lot of maybe young girls in STEM, even down to high school level or elementary school level. So young people are the future, and the digital natives and the Gen Z. I'm a mother of two. I know that very, very well. They are the energy that we need to tap into, and in terms of fact checking. There are a lot of civil society-led efforts on civil defense. These are all important aspects that's very organic, and we want to encourage that to continue.
Well, it's very nice to hear that you can still get young people out of the house for a town hall meeting. I find that very comforting.
I guess one more substantive question, and then we'll ask you our fun question at the end. But most of our audience is still based in the United States, and when we think of our two-party system, it seems very basic, right? Or not too complicated. Two parties similar in Taiwan. I always find it really interesting that our elections fall in the same years, but we still have a lot of cultural, institutional, political differences. Right. So I was just wanted to give you the opportunity and ask you, I know we've talked a little bit about some of the perceptions earlier in the episode, but what is something that Americans get wrong about the DPP?
So at the beginning, and I don't think it's that much of the problem now as it has been, is seeing DPP as sort of the pro-independence provocateur of the cross-strait relationship that was on most of the mainstream media headlines. And we've done a lot of communications on that aspect, and after the records of governance, I think people are safe to say that Taiwan is a more of a trusted partner, regional force of stability and the force of good. So we got that out of the way. I found ourselves, really honestly in this new situation where the conservative movement is rising in this country, and our name, the Democratic Progressive Party, seems to be the original. Seemed that there were a lot of misunderstanding on the conservative side about why are you progressive
and democratic.
why are you the first country to legalize same-sex marriage? And so, I have to go back to the history of all this right-based movement to explain where we are. But we're not apologetic for being liberal in the domestic front. We do have to point to our friends here that have these questions that we are the party that really share the interest with you all on anti-communism, which I would argue the other political party have no longer done, or they're still under some sort of soul searching after Chinese President Xi came up to kind of equate the 1992 consensus to one country, two system, and then the subsequence of what he has done to Hong Kong's autonomy. So this is something that we have the common grounds on. So we're focusing on that, and because this is our mutual interest.
Yeah, I guess I had never thought about the fact that, progressive in the Taiwanese context might mean something, very different.
Yeah, but I could also argue, and I've heard that from our DPP friends, that progressive actually is a adjective or a qualifier for democracy. When the founders thought about this name, they wanted to keep the democracy in progress. That's why it's progressive. They wasn't thinking at the time of funding of all these rights-based movements.
Yeah, no, it's great that you're able to clarify that, and that's why we wanted you to explain to our audience too, right? Because I think those are valid questions. So no, thanks for sharing all that.
Yeah, but as Channing mentioned, we like to end the episode with something a little more fun, lighten the mood. So one thing that we like to ask each of our guests in the spirit of this podcast, bringing Taiwan to a broader audience, is we love to ask each guest to recommend something from Taiwan, sort of whatever you like. And I know that you came prepared, so I won't go through the whole list of what that could be. But I would love to hear a little bit about your recommendation.
Yeah, that is actually the question I thought through for days. It was really hard. There are just so many things I am passionate about and want to recommend. But then I guess I land with this choice of our Formosa black bear, because I was looking at the panda frenzy at the National Zoo here. I was thinking, we also have something, right? It's also a bear, and it's a unique indigenous bear with a victory shape of the white coat. It's very cute, and it is. This bear is actually made by a civil group, a Taiwanese American civil group in New York, and they have this rallies every September during the UN Assembly, calling for Taiwan's greater international participation. It's called the Keep Taiwan Free. But then I think the meaning has really gone beyond the original design. And case in point was that the last Trump administration, we have a really good ambassador to the United States, Kelly Craft. If you see her OX post, you could see this bear is everywhere in her purse and going with her to the UN when she was promoting Taiwan's meaningful participation in the international organization. So we're really grateful and happy that the current Trump administration, as well as the Biden administration, continue to call for Taiwan's participation in the international organization. And, this bear is also for you all that, really are, working really hard day in and day out and help us keep Taiwan free and keep both of our countries free.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so excited about
Not only
this.
cute, but also very meaningful. It's like the perfect gift.
Thank you so much.
And it's made in Taiwan. 100%.
Even better.
Even better. Thank you, Iris, so much for your time today,
pleasure.
for the wonderful conversation. I know I learned a lot. We always learn a lot when we do these interviews, so we really appreciate it and hope you stay in touch.
It's my pleasure, and likewise.
Oh my gosh, Libby, look how adorable this little black bear is. I think it's so adorable. Thank you,
Future
Iris.
guests will have a high bar to meet.
I
for our final
know.
question.
Look at that. Thank you, Iris, for this adorable little bear. And thank you, of course, again to Iris for coming and sharing her insight. I think that was such a wonderful conversation about, just one of the main political parties in Taiwan and how they were born, how they grew up. Libby, what was your biggest takeaway from our conversation?
Yeah, I think one image I was really struck by when Iris was talking was how she compared the DPP as a party to, she said when it first sort of came into power, it was like a teenager, right? And it was sort of understanding how to take on the responsibility of something like governing, which of course is a very different beast. And now, she described it as maturing into a middle-aged responsible adult. And I think that was, a really interesting way to think about sort of the DPP's journey from 1986 to where we see it that it is today.
Yeah, and I think zooming out a little bit, my biggest takeaway really was, this is democracy in action, right? You see that the party was founded just by people who wanted to have a say in how they were being governed. Of course, that democratic transition happened and they were able to mature as a party, as you said. And so, long term, it is really encouraging to see that that activists can, become governors and really succeed in governing in that way. And so, just a successful example of democracy for, our friends around the world to see. So it's just another reason why we think it's so important to highlight Taiwan's story here at SCSP.
Yeah, well, on that optimistic note, thank you all for joining us for another episode of Strait Forward. We, of course, next episode we'll be diving into a similar conversation, but with the KMT and looking at how they view things. But we look forward to seeing you.
We look straight forward to seeing you next time.